not quite got the worst session. I'm not going straight after lunch, but I know I'm holding people up from afternoon tea, so we'll go through this. I think Sean's touched on a number of these points, but we just quickly, has anyone got any, I mean, rather than rehash them, because Sean covered them quite thoroughly, but has anyone got any questions on who appoints an insolvency practitioner, or how does it work, any of these ones, or what are the key differences? This is a slide we've put up, which is a slight tweak on what Sean's done. So yeah, the liquidator, as Sean said, shareholder generally, courts, the credit applications, the board. Very rare that a company's constitution allows directors to appoint a liquidator. I don't think I've seen it in any of the appointments I've had, but it could be written into a constitution. Creditors, by vote, generally at the watershed meeting. Directors generally can also do it through a court application. I have been appointed a liquidator that way before. There's irreconcilable differences by directors, and we've been appointed by that court application in that process. Key difference is, once again, you're just doing that. We've got special powers under the Companies Act. We realise the assets for all creditors and distribute in order of priority. And our job is basically take possession, protect, realise, distribute the proceeds and realisation of assets to creditors. I think on Arrow we're up to about 17 or 18 cents on one of the Arrow ones and about 8.20 on the other one, and there is another distribution to come. We were about to close out Arrow at the end of last year, then someone tried to slam us with another claim, so that delayed us for about 10 months while we've fought that and managed to knock it back.
Andrew?
What?
It's just as Arrow is constructed specifically, do you want to talk why the VA was chosen for Arrow?
Because that was the best mechanism at the time to try and get more money back, and the process was taken as Sean said. There was a route, rather than chucking it straight to liquidation, it was thought we can try and manage this process in a better way and get that out to get a better, and as I said, we have made, I think we're up, as I say, one of them is over 20 cents, and I think one's just below 20 cents. I can't remember which way around they go either. And there's further distributions to go on both of those, both of the key main Arrow companies. Receivership, general security holders, generally by a bank or some other financier or the court. As Sean said, we're acting in the best interest of the appointed, that's their primary, but we also have a duty to all other creditors to obtain the best price reasonably attainable for the assets at the time of sale. We'll trade them for a while, or we'll try and get the stuff and get the businesses sold, get it away. VA board can appoint us under the Companies Act. General security holder can appoint us. The banks have. I have been involved where a bank has appointed us an administrator, and the courts can also appoint us. There's a moratorium period, and we work through the steps that Sean went out. Hopefully during the VA process, by that moratorium we get time to try and restructure it, try and figure out a plan with the directors, and then we have to get that signed off by the creditors to try and take the business forward. Or wind it up if that's what it is. Working with an insolvency practitioner, these days we have to be licensed. And we're licensed under the Insolvency Practitioners Regulation Act 2019. Prior to this act, there were no rules. I think the rules back in the past were you were over 18, you weren't certified, and you weren't a bankrupt. Is that it, Sean? They're the only rules to be a liquidator back then? Yeah. What's that? Yeah, just. So, we're now the regulator for us is the New Zealand Institute of Chartered Accountants. Applies to liquidators, receivers, and administrators. We've got to have over 5 years of insolvency work or experience, over 1,000 hours if we're a chartered accountant, working at formal insolvency engagements and at manager level and above, so senior level work. One of the bizarre things on this, which I still find ironic with this, a lot of our work in this space is not in formal appointments. It's actually in trying to help businesses restructure, pre-appointment or an insolvency event, when you're trying to help businesses reorganise and do things, which we do below the radar. You don't see people like our firms like ours or other ones appear. You're going in, you're helping the company, because the bank suggested, can you go and talk to this company, help them restructure. We spend more time in that probably than we do in formal appointments. And that is actually more enjoyable work because you're trying to help people understand their problem, fix it, move on, we leave, you carry on, you stay with your normal accountants, we're gone. And that's the better part of our work. We have to do 20 hours minimum annual insolvency CPD. We have to hold PI insurance. We must also comply with the applicable legislation under the various acts that we're required to do, Companies Act, Receiverships Act, and the Insolvency Practitioners Regulations Act, and the RETANS, or New Zealand Chartered Accountants Insolvency Standard, and the RETANS Rules and Conduct. So it is quite onerous at times, but most of us are experienced enough and can just, it's not, but you are now dealing with a licensed person, so you have a complaint, you have a process, you can go complain to the Chartered Accountants if you don't like us. Probably don't like us anyway, but that's, anyway, even our own firm doesn't like the work we do. Don't come and talk to our clients, we don't want to see you, but we could help them. No, stay away. So, we have, at the time of our appointment, we are, how are we going to pay, how are we going to get money, how are we going to pay the costs that we incur. Often it's very difficult, particularly in construction, for us to continue to trade. And then we've got to deal with security for sites, health and safety, what, if any, employees are to retain, and then we'll start a process of either realising assets, continuing to trade on certain projects where everyone agrees that it's practical for us to do that, and also where we can make money out of it. Often we can't if there's significant creditors. One of the things you should keep in mind, if you're starting to get involved, if any principals or other people are involved in here, it's often quite sensible to retain someone like us to help you against another insolvency practitioner or to help advise you if you're caught up in these processes. You'll have to pay us, but we know what they're going to do, and we can help you with that process in conjunction with your lawyers at times, but we have done that for principals. We have worked with them and said, this is what they're going to do, this is the practical things, a different sets of advice than what Janine would provide because they're going to look at the contractual situation. We're going to give you a bit more of the practical stuff on some of the things. But we have done it. We did it with, I think it was Armstrong Downs in Wellington. We were involved with that one for the principal on that. We worked quite successfully with that. Creditor claims. Sean touched on these, and I sort of touched on it in the first slide. Assets, what have you got to realise? Who gets hold of them? The preferential creditors, key ones that we're sort of having to deal with straight up is the employees, and then the IRD are the main ones. There are a number of others, but they don't sort of fit into here. You're not going to have customs generally in here. You're not going to have other agencies, government agencies. But the 7th schedule of the Companies Act has a big list, and we have to work through who's got priority and not. So the key assets we're working with is accounts receivable and inventory. As I sort of mentioned before, unlikely to have inventory, and generally if there's any inventory, there should be a personal money securities interest attached to it, so you won't be able to get your grubby mitts on it and be able to sell it, because someone else should have an interest already in that. It should be secured. The priority is then the cost, the administration, personal money security interest creditors, preferential creditors, secured creditors. That's how we've got to allocate the assets that we have. And then finally down the bottom, your shareholders. Assets not subject to preferential creditor priority is other assets. Once again, we work through cost, PIMSI creditors, secured creditors, preferential creditors, unsecured creditors. That's the ranking changes when we're dealing with the other assets of the company. And my best comment there would be, comma, if any, other assets. Outside the PPSA, there'll be a retention trust account, retention creditors account, which you've just heard from Sean about, so I won't. And it's just changed, or changing. That's probably all I had on some of the practical bits of that. Has anyone got any questions on dealing with?
When the Retention Act comes in, it goes to which priority?
The Retention Act.
Yeah, so the retention...
retention sits outside. It's not a company asset.
So after you pay the retention, then this process starts, is it?
Sorry, I'm confused.
Yeah. The retention sits outside of this. That means, say that they haven't created the trust for retention. So you first pay that retention and then start.
Well, then we've got to find out if we have any. If they've used it as, I think, in the example of the things that we've seen before, that it's not held in any form of trust, and they're an overdraft situation. There's no money set aside for retentions. We've got no money to pay it. You know. Ideally, it's held in a separate bank account, and then we've got a different set of issues. Under the new regime, we'll have a proper trust account. Hopefully, you found it there is a separate bank account and it's been administered properly. Otherwise, in the worst scenarios where it just gets got churned through and it's in the working capital and it's using to fund the overdraft, and the company, by the time we take over and they're well into overdraft, there's no money. And we're stuck. Yep. That's useful, isn't it?
Yeah. So you brought up Armstrong down sort of tied in quite nicely to what was originally brought up in terms of the continuity deeds and the limitations of it.
Okay.
So one of the big talking points that came out of Armstrong's reputation was, they had a couple of government and institutional clients who had the money and the cash flow just to pay subcontractors when they were told they weren't paid. Right, so subcontractors were engaged with all on board with their continuity guarantees and just paid to close out the construction projects. What are the principal's legal rights regarding the information around those payments? Because a lot of the financial data is covered now in private systems. We work in systems with HMX or Procore or something like that. And as soon as the bill's not paid on Procore, it shuts down. And you guys as liquidators might not be aware that that's how it works. And it might be captured somewhere internally within the systems. But on top of a whole lot of other problems, us getting locked out of the project information, we suddenly got no visibility on these payments. So what are our rights on these guarantees to view whether our subcontractors have been paid?
What role would you have? You're a principal?
Project manager,
Yeah.
engineering contract.
Yeah, so the hard part can be just getting the information. I know on some of the bits on that, we asked the subcontractors to provide us what they claimed and what they were saying was outstanding. And we had a QS look at that for the principal, and then they made an informed decision. I don't know all the legal, how they got around some of the continuity bits and pieces, because there was a lawyer, it wasn't Minters, it was another firm that was handling that sort of process. Because then we were saying, well, if the principal pays it, then they stepped into the shoes of the subcontractor that was still owed under the liquidation. And that's how we got around. They got around some of those, and it was basically there were deals cut to get people back to work. Now, some of the legal bits that Janine talked about, I wasn't involved in, but I know that we were involved with trying to cut some of the deals and just get things done so that those principals could get some of those contracts back, get those people back on site, because you wanted them to ultimately produce the producer statement, because they're the ones that are going to do it. But to get information, who's paid and not paid, becomes quite a battle.
The liquidator can lobby Procore to get access reinstated because they're effectively running their company, can't they?
Well, they've still got to pay. There's going to become a cost.
It's paid quarterly, and Procore's generally pretty good. You lobby them, you say what's happened, they'll turn it on.
Yeah.
All the access to the subcontractor's information is still held by the subcontractor.
Yeah, so he or she's still got what they've already claimed.
Well, they've got all their copies of
Yeah.
the paperwork. The only difference is for the head contractor, the subcontractor can't get it turned on to view the subcontractor's information, but they can view their own.
Yeah.
If you take New Zealand, for instance, you can electrically connect several principals to answer and said we won't give you access unless you pay the bill that has been paid. So again, those deals that you're talking about, you need to gain access for that information.
Generally, people will help us or help, to get stuff, but then you can just be hard. They'll be hard-nosed about it as well, some, because they may be unpaid as well.
If money has been transferred out just before the appointments, can that money be ordered to be put back?
So who's it being paid to? Paid to a subcontractor?
Well,
paid to anyone?
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, you can start trying, and that was avoidable preferences that Sean paid back, because everyone's ultimately, the aim is to treat them in the order of one of these sort of things, depending on what the asset is. But there can be other problems. You've got to then, and it goes back to what I said, if you get offered the money, you're going to take it, aren't you? If you've heard, company XYZ's going down, and they say, we'll pay you $50,000, and you'll take $50,000 and fight with me later, won't you? I would. You know, it's just, you're going to take the cash. But there is a risk that you will face a claim, and someone like Sean will be writing you a fairly strong letter going, you got paid on this day because we'll have worked it out, and you've been preferred, essentially, over all the rest of the people in the room, because you should have only got, because the money available was 10 cents in the dollar, but you've got 50,000 or over half, 50 cents in the dollar of what you owed. So that's not fair to everyone else, and that's why our job as a liquidator would be to pull all those assets back, and we're going to pull all those things back, try and pull those things back from everybody else in the room, and go, okay, now we've got, instead of having 10,000, we've got 90,000 because we've collected all it back, but we're going to have a fight, and you're going to go no, and we'll sue you, and we'll either get practical about it, or, yeah, I mean, it's just the way it works. I mean, yeah, but if you get offered money, then you might say, well, I'm prepared to fight you for it. And there is a whole series of rules that we could go through about whether you knew or whatever, but I don't want to. There's a whole afternoon that you can spend with Sean and list all of those things out, but yeah. So, is there any other?
Just a quick one. Now, between the liquidation and voluntary admission and the receivership, who decides which is which? So who decides where to go?
So that probably goes back to, depending, so if you're, the directors could decide to put the company into liquidation. You know, depending on what your financial situation is. The bank may go, actually there's an ability for us to get money, and we've got a general security agreement, general security agreement, and they will say, there's money in there, we want that controlled by a receiver, which is someone we know, whereas quite often a liquidator, yes, they might come and do that, but they have control, all right? Because whoever is appointed as a receiver, their primary duty is back to that person, back to that entity, is back to the general security holder. So they want control. They've lost faith. You know, the directors, they're breaching banking covenants and a whole pile of other different things, and they're not paying other creditors. They hear that sort of stuff. So they will go, need to appoint a firm of receivers to take control of this business and sort it out. And our primary duty in that role is to, if it's a bank, it'll be to the bank. Whereas this person is not, their primary duty is not to that. So often, sometimes the directors, the board might go, we're going to put into administration. The bank go, actually, they're still not going to act in our best interests. So people are acting in their best interest is one way to sort of look at it as well. So the bank will go, we want first dibs, there's money there that we can, or assets we can realise, we'll put receivers in to take control and sort it out. And that's what we'll do, or similar to us. Liquidation, the bank might look at it and they hear, oh, company ABC's gone into liquidation. Fudge, there's no money in that for us. We're not going to waste the cost and appoint a receiver over the top, which what would happen. Or the same with the VA, they might go, board's resolved to put it into voluntary administration, might still put a receiver in over the top, because once again, it goes back to whose interests that person or persons is working for. So it sort of gets a bit, these two are sort of the two on the outsides can be done sort of generally internally. The one in the middle will be external.